Hi everyone, welcome to a new video, and today I am so excited to talk to you about one of my favorite books of all time. And no, it's not a Jane Austen novel as it usually is, and also to show you an edition of it that just has to be at least one of the most beautiful books that I have ever owned, if not the most beautiful. So it's Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, and just look at this edition. I mean, first of all, here, and then the details in gold and the handwriting, and then this in the back, and it's just so beautiful. I can't get over how absolutely gorgeous it is. So if you follow my channel, then you would have seen a review that I did of another book like this. So this is by Chronicle books, and it's edited by Barbara Heller. And before, she edited an edition of Pride and Prejudice and Letters, which I've also reviewed. And obviously I was very excited for that one too. And I will leave the link below if you wanna have a look at that review. So to begin with, Little Women by Louisa May Alcott is one of my absolute favorite books of all time, ever since I read an illustrated edition for children in Portuguese and wondered what on earth were pickled limes and why someone would go through so much trouble to get some. And it's a question that I still don't have a satisfying answer for. And seriously, if you live next to a place that sells pickled limes, please send some to me, because I really want to understand what all the fuss is about. And the earliest memories I have of this book is that edition for children. And when I was back in Portugal visiting my family, my brother and I were going through old books in the garage, and I found this one. And let's just say that the illustrations were not as good as I remembered, but just finding that one with Amy and the box of pickled limes, that from the illustration, I think is not a fair representation of what they must actually look like. Like I said, the illustrations were not that good, but it was just so nice to remember my first contact with this book, and now reviewing this gorgeous edition. I'm just very excited for it, and I can't wait to hear what you think of the edition. And also I'd love to hear your thoughts on Little Women, and if you're a fan, what your first experience was of reading this book. Please let me know in the comments. And as someone who is a writer, passionate about education, pretty independent and stubborn as a mule, I guess it's really obvious which of the March sisters I identify with. But this wasn't always obvious to me. So when I first read Little Women, I really identified with Amy, possibly because I was very young, and because deep down she wanted to be good, but mostly she was very spoiled. And I guess as a kid, I was at least self-aware enough to realize that I was too. And I then moved on to Beth because I so desperately wanted to be good. I was the oldest in my family, and I really wanted to be a good example for the younger kids, but that got old really quickly. And even with this, it's obvious which sister I resemble the most, with this wish for wanting to be good, but failing miserably at it. And then I thought, maybe I want to be more like Meg. So as I grew up, I thought Meg maybe is the way to go. She seems to be this really mature person who knows exactly what she wants in life. And it all seems to come so effortlessly. And now I can't help but laugh at this, because Meg's life is possibly the complete opposite of what I want for myself. And yeah, I'm nothing like Meg. I am definitely a Jo. And I think Jo is one of the best characters anyone has ever created. This representation of how a woman really will have a lot to face if she wants to have a life that is in any way radical, that goes against the models society expects of her, that of relationship, marriage, and children. And especially when, on top of all of that, she is fighting to belong in an industry that is dominated by men, and from which she will be relentlessly underestimated and dismissed. boy, I wonder what that's like. And we go back to Little Women because, unfortunately for us, the things it has to say about gendered expectations, about money and class, and the ways in which they limit the opportunities that are open to you continue to be really relevant to our lives today. But what I love most of all about Little Women is that it's always hopeful. I always go back to this book every year and I'm immediately drawn to it, particularly when things are getting a little bit harder for me. And it reminds me to focus on the things that you have instead of the things that you lack. And it reminds you that many of the things we spend a lot of time worrying about, whether this is money and status, are in the end really unimportant compared to so many other things. And I think that's such a wonderful message of this book. And I think that's also why we keep going back to it. So if you've been following my YouTube channel from the beginning, this will be no news to you. In my first video ever, I talked about how much I loved Little Women and how this was one of my top 5 favorite books of all time. And this is why I was so happy when Chronicle Books released a version of this book with letters, edited, like I said, by Barbara Heller. This is the second book that they have published like that. As you know, the first one was Pride and Prejudice. And when I first received Pride and Prejudice, it was immediately obvious that this was the most beautiful book I had ever owned. And I was so excited to receive this one afterwards. Barbara Heller, who has edited this edition and the Pride and Prejudice one, has worked in film and television, finding furnishings and props for shows, location managing for films, including for Nancy Meyers, who is one of my favorite directors of all time. And The Holiday is one of the best movies of all time, and I won't listen to anyone who says otherwise. Sorry. It's just amazing. And she even directed award-winning short films, which is so cool. So I think this just sounds like she's had one of the best careers anyone could. And Heller and her team of artists have done an amazing job once again. This edition is just so beautiful. And in order to show you just how beautiful, I'm going to show you my 3 favorite letters from it. If you haven't seen what one of these editions looks like, as you can see, and let me show you an example, and you're also going to be seeing my BTS sticky notes. So yes, can you tell that I'm also a BTS fan? So you will have these sleeves and they will appear right next to the texts so that you can pull out the respective letter, in this case newspaper, as you are getting to the right part of the novel. And this is one of my absolute favorites. It's the Pickwick Portfolio. So you have the print version here, and then you go on to the rest of the novel, which is presented like that. But yeah, if you pull it out from its little sleeve, then you have the Pickwick Portfolio. And if you've read Little Women before and you heard that this edition contained facsimiles of letters and other written documents that feature in the book, this is probably the one that would have come to mind for you. And that was certainly the case for me. So Pickwick Portfolio is the family newspaper that the March sisters put together, and the name is inspired by the Pickwick Papers, a novel by Charles Dickens, who is referenced a lot throughout Little Women and is one of the favorite authors of the March sisters. And I will show you what it looks like. Look at this. Let me zoom out so that you can see it in all its glory. So it's like that. And then the back is like this. I can't even imagine the amount of work that must have gone into this in, developing the different styles of handwriting. It's just, the detail in it is just amazing. The blots in the paper so that it looks older. It's just, the little drawings like here, for example, with the hat. It's just amazing. And I thought the end result for this was just so beautiful. As I was saying, the handwriting, the different styles of handwriting reflect the different personalities of the March sisters. So Beth's, which you can see over here in the middle, is very neat and unassuming, for example, whereas Jo, I don't want Jo's handwriting to cover me completely, but you can see it over here. And it's in this beautiful cursive style, but also it has these mistakes along the way that she has furiously, written off. And probably because, her pen is not keeping up with the speed of her thoughts. And I had to laugh especially at this bit at the end, the weekly report. So this is where the girls rate each other's behavior throughout the week and they decide how good or how bad they were. And basically they're all doing all right, except for Jo, who just has bad written in bold and capital letters right at the bottom, which I just thought, I couldn't help but laugh at this. I just thought it was so lovely. And the second one is a little note, and because it doesn't really contribute to moving the plot along, I had sort of forgotten about it, and seeing this facsimile really brought home to me how lovely and touching this moment in the novel really is. And it happens after a conversation between Jo and her mother, Mrs. March, where Jo confesses to her how hard she is trying to control her temper and not letting it get the better of her. And her mother tells her that actually it was exactly the same for her. Mrs. March tells her that she is angry pretty much every day and that sometimes she has to stop what she's doing and have a moment to try and control herself. So there's no judgment here. It's not the kind of messed up generational conflict, kind of like at the beginning of the new Disney movie, which I loved, Turning Red, where the mother expects her daughter to be perfect all the time and to always be this meek, obedient, happy little creature. I think here Mrs. March basically tells her daughter that no one can appreciate her efforts as much as herself, since she knows what it's like to feel angry at the world and that how slowly things are progressing, but that ultimately you have to have some control over your emotions if you don't want to self-sabotage your way through life. And there's 2 letters in this envelope. And the first one is also excellent. That is not the one I chose, but it's a little letter from Laurie, and it has this lovely detail, this drawing that says the war for the Union. So this is referencing the fact that this is a novel that is in many ways a novel about war, about the American Civil War. But it was this really plain, unassuming letter from mother to daughter that was one of my absolute favorites. You can see it here. So it begins on this side and then it continues horizontally like this. And it's basically Mrs. March saying, "Go on, dear, patiently and lovely, and always believe that no one sympathizes more tenderly with you than your loving mother." And I just thought it was such a lovely encapsulation of this relationship between mother and daughter, and the simplicity of it is something that I found really beautiful. And going from beautiful to absolutely show-stopping, I have to show you my favorite one. So this is in an envelope that has many letters, as it's from the section in the novel in which Mrs. March is away because her husband has been wounded while at war. So the girls are sending her letters telling how they're doing to make sure that their father is doing okay and to also reassure their mother that they are managing fine without her. And they are absolutely gorgeous, reflecting their personalities once again. Meg's, let me try and find it, is in this beautiful blue paper, in this really nice handwriting. It has the flowers at the top, so it just looks really mature, really pristine. So exactly what we would expect from Meg. But my favorite one is one that is shared between Beth and Amy. So the section by Amy is just brilliant. The way they did this is just amazing. So it's blotted, as you can see, and it's written in this really light blue, which makes sense as the choice made by a younger person to go for this like bright blue. And because Amy is still quite young, we really enjoy her blunders as she's trying to learn how to speak English properly. And there are so many spelling errors, like contradict, ending with a K, and things like that. And it's just absolutely hilarious. And to see it represented like this, it really brings it to life. And also with Amy's snobbishness really coming through as she addresses her mother by "my chère maman" to show that she's oh so fashionable because she can speak French. And this comes right after the section by Beth, which is far more simple, as you can see. So with this like really beautiful cursive handwriting, but you know, very unassuming, very much like Beth. But what I love about it is that in this first half written by Beth, she says that she will leave the rest of the page for Amy. So as always, we have sweet, selfless Beth, always thinking of other people. And she writes that she will press some pansies into the letter so that her dad can see what they look like. And look at this. This is my favorite thing in the entire edition. And I will make sure that the light lets me show this properly. Okay. I hope you can see it. Okay. So the flowers there, I think this is my absolute favorite detail. So it's just so beautiful how they did it. And I found myself just touching the paper because I couldn't believe that these weren't actual flowers that had been pressed into the paper. It just looks so realistic. And it's this kind of attention to detail that I absolutely love about this edition. You really feel like you are reading letters by actual people who have actually, you know, plastered real flowers into the paper. And it really shows their different personalities and the effort that the characters will have spent and devoted to writing these letters. And I think it just really brings it to life. It really makes you feel like you are in the novel. It just makes me feel like if someone dressed me in period appropriate costumes and put these letters in front of me, even though I am fairly certain that my talents for acting are pretty much zero, that I would still be able to embody these characters because you just really feel like you have entered their world. And I think this was such an amazing way for Barbara Heller to use her talents, and I'm just absolutely in love with this edition. I loved going back to Little Women with this edition. I really like that it includes not just the first volume, but also the second, usually known as Good Wives, so that you can follow the March sisters all the way from childhood into adulthood. And I think that, like the Pride and Prejudice one, this would make the most gorgeous present to give to someone. So if you know someone who is a fan of Little Women, then I would not hesitate to buy this for them. And thank you so much to Chronicle Books for sending this book to me. It's just the most beautiful addition to my little library. And thank you so much everyone for watching this video. I will see you in the next one, and until then, stay well and keep reading.